Good morning and afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Mondays with Mendy. Today, we are going to talk about lessons from Caesar on Jewish leadership. And this is an especially relevant conversation because we are preparing to celebrate Passover, the most celebrated Jewish holiday on the calendar, in just about a week's time. A week from today, Monday evening, Jews all around the world will be sitting down to celebrate the first Seder. And so what is the connection between Caesar and the Passover experience? And how does Caesar teach us so much about leadership, a man that engaged in quite a bit of cruelty and so on? That's what we're going to talk about today. So Passover is actually not just a celebration of the Seder, even though that is one of the focal points of the holiday and one of the most popular parts. Passover, in fact, runs for 8 days, 7 days in Israel, 8 days everywhere else. And the first two are traditional holidays, days where we spend more time praying and having meals with our families, similar to Shabbat. And the last 2 days as well are also that same level of celebration. And the intermediary days are days where we eat matzah, we refrain from eating leavened bread, but we don't quite engage in the same amount of festivity as we do the first two and the last two. What's interesting is that the last 2 days of the holiday are known for their essential connection to the Messiah, Mashiach. And it is on those days when we read in the Torah and the Haftorah about the prophecies that are said related to the coming of the ultimate Messiah. And it's then that we also read about the splitting of the Red Sea. And the obvious question is, why? First of all, why do we speak about the splitting of the Red Sea on the second half of Passover? Because that is when we believe the Jewish people went through the Red Sea after Moses split the sea. Of course, they left Egypt at the beginning of the holiday, and then about a week later, they arrived at the sea, and that's when they went through the sea. But why is it specifically on that time that we celebrate this concept of the Messiah by reading it in the Haftorah and making special references to it during the holiday? Why specifically then? So the Haftorah that we read talks in great detail about the prophecy of the Mashiach, that he will usher in a time of peace and tranquility, when the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, and it will be in a spiritual awareness that is imparted to the entirety of humanity. And then it says that cow and bear shall graze together, and wolf shall live with lamb. Well, we know all of the beautiful, beautiful qualities that are highlighted in the prophecy from Isaiah that talk about this ultimate era of peace and tranquility. But again, why specifically connected with the second half of the Passover holiday and the splitting of the Red Sea? What took place then that brings it all together? What's even more interesting and confusing is that when you look at this story of the Jewish people crossing over the Red Sea, which took place on the 7th day of Passover, a week after leaving Egypt, you find that they actually didn't cross from one bank of the sea over the sea to another bank. They went into the sea from here, made a semicircle, and ended up at the original bank just a little bit further south from where they had started, which seems utterly strange and bewildering. How is it possible that the Jewish people, we know, they leave Egypt. They're chased by the Egyptians. They come up to the Red Sea, and they're encouraged to go into the sea by Moses, only to come out on the same bank. What possible value could there be for crossing into a Red Sea if they could have simply traveled along the bank to get to where they wanted to go? This is one of the confounding questions that we ask ourselves, based simply upon the fact that when you look at the encampments of the Jewish people in the Torah, you notice that they continued from the same side of the sea from where they entered. So why would we put the Jewish people through this drama, the pressure and the stress of being put up against the Red Sea only to cross through it and come out on the same bank? The simple explanation, of course, is that this was a mode, it was a method for drowning all of the Egyptians. The warriors which had traveled after them and pursued them in great haste, they all drowned in the Red Sea. And this was a way of bringing them out of Egypt to get them to this point so that they could be annihilated finally and completely. Okay, that's one explanation. We're going to talk in greater detail as to what was the quality of the Jewish people traveling through the Red Sea and how that quality of them traveling through the Red Sea specifically relates to the coming of the Mashiach, this ultimate era of peace and tranquility. So why did I mention Caesar in the opening of today's discussion? What is the connection between this and Caesar? It's amazing. We think of the Roman Empire, we think of a time when people lived without appreciation for human life, without any morals, no appreciation for adultery and immoral sexual behavior. And yet, we find the most amazing thing in the Talmud, that some of the sages of the Talmud compared the Messiah that will come in the ultimate era of peace and tranquility, the Mashiach, compared Mashiach to Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar. And this is, it's strange. What is the possible connection between Caesar and Mashiach? It says quite clearly in the Talmud, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, the Holy One, blessed be he, will establish the Jewish people another David. Just like there was once King David that led the Jewish people, so too there will be another David. And this David will be their king. And Rav Papa asked, I thought it says that David is going to be the king forever. And so he explains, the Talmud goes on and explains that it's not King David himself, but it's Mashiach who will be like David. He will be like a Caesar and a half-Caesar. What does that mean? What does it mean that the Mashiach will ultimately be like Caesar? So to understand this, we have to reverse back and look at what is the name Caesar mean and where does it come from and who was Caesar. So the name of Caesar is prominently known for the powerful dictator of the Roman Republic, who turned it from the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire in 100 BCE through 44 BCE. About 300 years before the destruction of 30 years before the destruction of the Second Temple. Because ultimately it was the Roman Empire that destroyed the Temple. That transition started with Julius Caesar. He, of course, conquered Great Britain, France, and Germany, and eventually assassinated his who was once his ally, but then became his archenemy, Pompey, and took over control of the entire Roman Empire. Subsequently, after he dies 4 years later, right, we know Caesar is killed by Brutus. Then the name Caesar is bequeathed from from one ruler to the next. It becomes a title for a dictator, a title for a leader, for a king, the name Caesar. What is the possible connection between the name Caesar of someone who is a man of bloodshed, of tyranny, and not just the original Caesar, but so much more so all of the Caesars that came subsequently? What possible connection can there be between that man, that title, and Mashiach, a man who was supposed to usher in a time of peace and tranquility? It doesn't make any sense. So if you look at the relationship between Julius Caesar and the Jews, you find that they actually had a great relationship. In fact, Julius Caesar was mourned by the Jewish people in ways more than the other Romans that lived in the Roman Empire at the time. Part of the reason was because under Pompey, a major tax was levied upon the Jewish people, and they were not allowed to rebuild fortifications of Jerusalem. They were stripped of certain coastal cities like Jaffa, the port city next to Tel Aviv. And so when Caesar wanted to destroy Pompeii, he asked the high priest at the time, who was Hyrcanus, a descendant of the Hashmonaim family, he asked him to lend him Jewish soldiers to accomplish this task, and he did, and he was successful, and Caesar remembered that. So later on, when he became the ultimate ruler, he abolished the taxes, he allowed Jerusalem's fortifications to be rebuilt, and he gave back some of the port cities. And therefore, he was always remembered favorably. But that still does not answer the question of what his connection is with the Mashiach. So let's reverse back even more. Let's ask the question, what does the word Caesar even mean? Because when Mashiach is being compared to Caesar, it's not just the man, it's the name, the word. What does Caesar mean? The Talmud, it tells us that after a number of years, an individual forcibly seized power, and his mother died during birth, but her womb was cut open, and the child was found alive, and therefore he was called Caesar, because the word Caesar means to cut. And because the mother's womb needed to be cut open surgically in order to remove the child, because the mother had died, therefore the child was called Caesar. And that is the reason why, till this very day, a cesarean section or a C-section is called that, because the word Caesar comes from the Latin word Caesar, to cut, and the woman's womb is cut open, just like the first cesarean section gave birth to a child who was named Caesar. So, whether it was actually Caesar himself or his father or grandfather, the name originated from someone who came out from a cut in the womb, which allowed the child to be extracted. That is how Julius Caesar received his name. Why on earth would a name Caesar, with an origin of the word cut in Latin, be a title that's so proudly held from one dictator to another, that crossed all barriers? Of course, you know the name Caesar in German was adopted as Kaiser. The name Caesar was adopted in Russian as Tsar, all coming from the original title Caesar. And the same thing can be found in languages all across, languages and nationalities all across the Balkans, the Slavic nations, African nations, Asian nations. So many took the term Caesar and applied it for a imperial power. Why? All the word means is cut, referring to a child being cut from the womb. How could that possibly be so valuable? And how, again, does it relate back to Mashiach? So a story is told, a beautiful story is told, about a poor Jew named Moishe. Moishe was a man who struggled to make a living, struggled just to put food on his table for his family. He would have to trudge all the way up the staircases in the tall apartment building, in the tall apartment buildings in his local city, and ask for money for charity. That's how he lived. It was not an easy life, but it's the one that he was relegated to support his family. Well, one day he sits down and rests for a moment on a park bench. And as he rests on that park bench, he daydreams. He thinks to himself about what it would be like if he didn't have the life that he has today. And what is the image that he conjures up in his mind? He says to himself, if I had ultimate control over my life, I would decide not to have any apartment buildings built in my town, only single floor homes, so that when I went around to beg for charity, I would not have to go up the tall staircases. Of course, Moishe, if you're going to daydream that you wouldn't have to be a pauper. If you're going to imagine, if you're going to fantasize, imagine of being free of begging altogether. But of course, someone that lives in that environment cannot imagine anything apart from that. That is somebody who is not able to lead. Someone who has to accept his life for what it is. And many people are like that. They are followers, not leaders. Followers accept the reality for what it is, and they learn to live and make the best out of it. That was Moishe. Leaders, on the other hand, leaders see the potential in everything. They see what can be, not just what is. And they work in order to make that the new reality. General Montgomery once said, "The difficult we do immediately, the possible takes a little longer." That's a leader. Because they recognize that nothing is impossible. It's just a matter of leadership. They open up new ideas, new pathways. They find new opportunities in different places. That's the mark of a leader. Where there is no door, where there is no opening, where there is no opportunity, they create a door. They create opportunity. There's no such thing as a wall in front of them. They break through walls. That is the mark of leadership. But unfortunately, throughout history, revolutionaries, leaders that have thought about what can be, not just what is, from Caesar all the way down through, they have split a lot of bloodshed. Mashiach will change that. Mashiach, though, will be a revolutionary, a leader that sees opportunity where it had not been previously self-evident. And Mashiach has a job of being a revolutionary because he will change the total dynamic of living. Till now, revolutionaries changed certain qualities. They changed the nationality of a country, the currency, they changed how it operated, they changed agricultural qualities. But it wasn't an essential transformation. It was a transformation of various details. Mashiach, on the other hand, will transform the very essence of life by bringing the spirituality and godliness here on earth into a visible and tangible sense. He will change the way we do everything. Our entire being will be moderated. And so it is a revolutionary idea. It is one that requires leadership and the ability to see the potential for what can be and not just what is. But it still brings us back to our original question, the original question being, what is in the name Caesar specifically that relates to this common era, this ultimate era of peace and tranquility? And it's very interesting. Why would you specifically use a Latin name, a Latin word, to reference to Mashiach, a man of holiness, spirituality? You would think if you wanted to define a quality in Mashiach, you would use a Hebrew term. But no, specifically it uses a Latin term. And I think it's because it wants to highlight the fact, the Rebbe says, that this transformation that will take place is not unique just to the Jewish community. It's a total, comprehensive, and complete transformation of life as we know it. From start to finish, total transformation. That is the era that we are trying to usher in. And it is that time that will bring about true peace and tranquility, not just for one group of people, but for all peoples. So therefore, Mashiach is specifically given a Latin name in the Talmud, a name like Caesar, to highlight that this is a widespread transformation, even as far as a Latin regime, a Latin empire, will also experience this total transformation. This time of peace and tranquility that we all yearn for will express itself in every aspect of human life. Not just in the way we serve God spiritually, but even in our physical existence, even in our day-to-day bread and butter, how we go to work, how we tie our shoes, how we live, how we love. Everything will experience transformation with the time and coming of Mashiach. It'll be on CNN and the New York Times and maybe even the Huffington Post, because it will be a total reorganization of life. Now, what does it mean that Mashiach will be like a half Caesar? Right? It would be like Caesar and a half Caesar. So I understand it. It'll be like Caesar because Mashiach will usher in total transformation, break through the current reality for a brand new reality, and that's what Caesar represents. The idea of being cut from the womb, of making an entrance and an opportunity where there did not exist one previously. Why it says a half Caesar? Because part of what Caesar is going to do is not about new transformation. It's not about bringing in brand new novelties and having those usher in a different direction in life as we know it. It's about bringing from within. Because within us, inside of us, is this capacity for spiritual life, for peaceful living. It exists there. And Mashiach's job is to bring that latent ability out to be fully expressed. That is the opportunity that lays in front of us. So yes, part of Mashiach will be transformational and revolutionary and bring about a spiritual awareness on earth that had never existed before. But part of it will be a half-Caesar, one that works within our existence to bring out our latent potential. You need to have both. To lead a healthy and successful life, to be a good leader, you have to dream of what can be, see the opportunity before it exists, and work to make it a reality. But at the same time, you also have to understand the practical qualities of each individual as an individual and work with them in their own reality to get them to where you want them to be. You have to hold their hand. You have to shepherd them to make sure that each one finds that ultimate reality that you have envisioned in their own personal life. So Mashiach has a big job out of it. Gather up society, transform the world as we know it into a peaceful and tranquil existence, and bring out our latent potential as individuals inside of each and every one of us. But it still doesn't answer the connection between the seventh day of Passover and the splitting of the Red Sea and the concept of Mashiach. Why are those linked specifically? So to understand their correlation, look at what transpired when the Jewish people crossed over dry land. What is the difference between a sea and dry land? There's a quote from the Talmud that says, every creature that is on dry land can also be found in the sea except the weasel. And of course, it doesn't mean literally those creatures. It means an equivalence. The point is that the sea is filled with unique organisms and fish and mammals and so on and so forth that exist there, but they are obscured. For most of us, unless you're a great diver, you don't have the opportunity to really come in contact with what is inside of the sea because it's completely covered. Whereas what exists on dry land is readily available and readily present. So that concept of obscurity can be applied in spirituality as well, because godliness is also concealed and obscured. The knowledge, the awareness, the spiritual connection can sometimes not be seen readily. And so it is up to each and every one of us to split the Red Sea, to break through, break free of what here in our world is oftentimes concealed and obscured, so that we can see the true reality that lays beneath the surface. Just like within the water, so too within our lives. As we prepare to celebrate the birth of our nation, with the Jews leaving Egypt, and then the Jews crossing over the Red Sea, we're talking about the definition of who we are as a people. And who are we? We are a people that lead, that take the baton and carry it forward, that see the ability, the opportunity before it comes to light, before it comes to fruition. See what can be the potential, and then make it so. That's who we are. And therefore, in order to accomplish that, we must be like Caesar. We must recognize the power of Mashiach, the power that we each have to get to this point in time when we will finally reveal the true existence inside of the world around us. That is what we're working towards. And it's important to understand your goal when you start out on your journey. When you go to build a house, you envision not just the structure of the house, but the final picture, the way the house will look in every detail, and then you work your tail off every single day to get to that point. That is what we are trying to do. That is what we are trying to accomplish and achieve. So as you sit down to celebrate the Seder this year, think about who we are as a people. Think about you and your personal life. Do you break free of your own limitations? Do you see opportunities before they come to light? Do you take advantage of them? Are you leading or are you following? Ask yourself that question. Because the Jewish people leaving Egypt and getting to the Red Sea, they recognized one thing. We must break free. Splitting of the Red Sea And revealing the dry land is a metaphor for the Jewish people breaking free of the obscurity of the physical world to reveal the spiritual life and existence dormant inside of everything. That is what the task we have. And why is that connected to Mashiach? Because that's what we're working towards. Mashiach is the ultimate celebration of that success, revealing the spiritual existence within the physical world. I want to thank you for joining me today for Mondays with Mendy. We're going to be taking a little break to celebrate Passover, so for the next 2 weeks we will not be having a Mondays with Mendy, but we will start again in 3 weeks' time. If you don't have Seder plans yet, please check out our website, ChabadSouthTampa.com, or email me, askmendy, ASKMENDY, @gmail.com, and we would love to celebrate together with you. Thanks again for joining us today, and as always, feel free to send us any comments, questions, or quirks. Wish you a great day, a very happy and healthy Passover, and we will see you all very soon.